95. National Public Radio interviewed Tom Fletcher, brand new United Nations Undersecretary for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator. Just back from his first week's trip spent negotiating successfully with Sudan's war government leader to open up 2 more relief truck routes into a nation where civil war has quite recently destroyed 11 million people's homes. These mostly unemployed refugees survive only on international aid that has recently plunged 20%. At least the UN's portion, down to a worldwide annual $40 billion. He was thrilled to see 24 food, water, and medicine truckloads enter Sudan, hardly scratching the surface of nationwide starvation. Both sides of Sudan's civil war, flush with endless world weapons business deliveries, deliberately kill their domestic civilians more than armed enemies with their most deadly and effective weapon of all, starvation. Just surrender and we might allow in more food, maybe even spend a stray artillery dollar to direct a few more gallons of irrigation to drought-dying crops. Or not. Assume that this world's worst war and humanitarian crisis alone is already exploding higher the likely underreported 9 million annual world starvation death toll. Gaza's 2.3 million have mostly gotten only a single meal a day, bread, for over a year. One of their last bakeries will close tomorrow because the IDF has cut this month's needed 800 truck daily deliveries to 0. Thousands rushed the bakery before its doors closed permanently. Only a few were crushed to death. When you have heard enough about the crises dooming us all, try to get an appointment to talk with your congressman or senator. Get a little computer guidance to record your version of that exchange or your message to the politician who may not see you on YouTube audio. Post a few signs near population flow stating in a few words why everyone must help. Hear me on YouTube. Then you too demand FaceTime with the one by law elected to represent us all, not just big shots. Thanks for seeing me, Mr. or Mrs. Politician. This won't take too long. War and drought are mighty close to starving at least 11% of 8 billion people. Describe the situation in your nation and in many others and how the leader could vote and work to worsen or relieve suffering, cause or prevent more deaths. You force my tax payments, leader. Then after no discussion with and permission from your constituents, you spend vast multiples more of my money for murder weapons than for all survival help. All these war appropriations that you never got my approval of are mandatory law. The pitiful total funds sent to save, not destroy lives, are mostly only private charity and some government volunteered until our weapons companies demand most of it back. What I'm asking you to do now, I'm also getting plenty of help to get court orders for, and also with the treaty to force you to do. Now it's only charitably give to private and UN programs, please, or not. Less and less giving from the world's more and more war, inflation, drought, and hunger-stricken. Oh well, what can we do? Here's what. Every nation direct a giant chunk of weapons appropriations, $2.3 trillion a year worldwide, instead to every major relief organization. especially the deeply staffed, organized, and practiced United Nations. Direct another chunk of my taxes to our own national and local programs. Please refer to our World Treaty designed to outlaw private gifts, always bribery to help jackals and hurt the rest of us. This treaty outlaws giant armies and all their invasion weapons, mass destructive from machine guns up to 8 billion killer bombs. It mandates world schooling to teach love, respect, and all faith and color equality to folks of all ages, now only propagandized into hate, disrespect, and abuse and murder of every faith, race, and nationality different, therefore inferior, evil, and criminal compared to ours. The insane, false, selfish, heartless reasons to make ever more war 90 seconds from doomsday. Total world relief aid spending figures are hard to add up on the internet because among 8 billion, a minority care or ask. 2/3 private individual and 1/3 government spending amounts to about $500 billion a year, declining as war, drought, and starvation ever worsen. All relief agencies roughly agree that 80% of the hungry get next to no help at all. The 70 million homeless or in miserable refugee camps mostly get barely enough food and water to stay alive. Bottom line, the world's $2.3 trillion doomsday bazaar that Murder Incorporated bribes governments to steal from us, or sanctions direct malicious sales to, must be diverted by we the people's treaty law to loving help, no longer hating murder. Lawmaker, vote my every damn tax dollar accordingly. Until our treaty, you must obey. May I remind you that you illegally abrogate the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, already your law requiring your work to fruition for world nuclear and conventional disarmament. Yes, we, the people, have the right and duty to require our leaders to represent us, stop harming and protect us, and see to our mass needs as only good, organized, able, financially and technologically powerful central and world governments are able to do. And by existing, then far better law must do. So, Representative, am I giving you my ideas and orders? Are you kidding? I couldn't make up one word of this good stuff. I got it all from the big guy. And if you just stop hating, stealing, bombing, and listen, you'd hear him too. Thou shalt pound thy swords into plowshares. Despite suffering up to 1,000 troops killed or injured daily, Russia has been slowly but steadily pushing its army farther into Ukraine through all of 2024. Zelensky has been unable to replace his army's smaller but still devastating losses. Inconsistent replacement of weapons and ammunition from the West hampers his offense and defense too. Suddenly, Ukraine's desperate president has stopped demanding invader withdrawal from all of Ukraine, now saying, "Keep your seized 20% of my country while I beg for admission into NATO for its promise of 30 nations' troops to directly fight Putin's highly likely reinvasion after a ceasefire's nice year of rest and army rebuilding." This, of course, would be the full World War III that exactly 0 NATO nations should sign up for. Considering the dozens of nations and myriad weapons company fueling of the Ukraine bloodbath, This world war's description now only lacks the multiple continent war theater. Putin's army may kill Ukraine in 6 months or less, but his failing economy cannot survive its worker and war money drain years longer. 25% inflation badly weakens the ruble, now being frantically, excessively printed, surely worsening government and citizen crippling hyperinflation. Putin now only rips giant war expenditures out of his dying government's social services, badly eroding his hurting, soon angry population's support of his special military operation. Putin will negotiate with Zelensky and Trump for a ceasefire, but he'll halt any implementation when his troops begin accelerating towards Kyiv. Without your world campaign against it, your major fears should be that Zelensky will end the world soon after flying major waves of drone bombs into Moscow area apartment buildings. We must appeal to a mass world citizen audience and all politician decision makers to pressure America to maximize Ukraine's front line and national population and energy, water, infrastructure defenses, plus pre- and post-ceasefire frontline defensive weapons and bunkers, obviously not including 30 NATO nations pouring in their own armies. A demilitarized buffer zone would be pointless and impotent without the totally reformed new United Nations peacekeeping army power that yours truly, but today not another human, lobbies for later in this speech. Ukraine has every defensive war right to bomb bases in Russia that have launched all Ukraine battering missile, bomber, and glide bomb attacks that have killed 150,000 civilians. Yet it would be the relative handful of Russian innocents that Zelensky's renewed, insane Russian apartment building bombing kills that would enrage all of Russia, forcing nuclear obliteration of Ukraine, NATO invasion to Moscow, then Russian ICBM murder of Europe and America, fast killing all 8 billion humanity. So we must even faster order, not beg Trump and Zelensky to stop all nearly as dangerous ground attacks in Russia and bomb only 100% military, 0% civilian targets. Only 10 weeks after bestial American firebombing killed at least 1 million German and Japanese civilians by both napalm and nuclear weapons, the United Nations was born. 4 of the world's most dangerous military power nations, Russia, Britain, France, and China, joined the world's first nuclear bomb power, the United States, in a quiet deal to turn this new world fraternity's claimed public purpose to end war into history's most stupendous, deadly, lying sabotage. A General Assembly of Nations was authorized to vote to stop any or many international or civil wars with armed peacekeeping forces drawn from every contributing country. But then all such world legislature action rulings would be withdrawn, made powerless and meaningless unless approved by their overlords, a 15-nation Security Council dominated by 5 permanent members, the top 5 killer dogs I just listed. 9 votes in favor, a 60% plurality, could make final Security Council world law decisions to activate similar General Assembly major peacekeeper force votes. Only with one terrifying, criminal, fatal exception that went on to constantly, deliberately destroy most UN peace enforcement power for the next 3/4 of a century. 5 of any Security Council yeses plurality must include the United States, Russia, China, France, and England. Just one of their no's would invalidate the other 14 yeses. So through today, the General Assembly could vote 194-1 to send troops to stop a terrible war and feed millions of starving people. Then the Security Council would endorse this rescue, 14 yeses to a single no. So then this 99.5% world-demanded rescue would be murdered by a single nation, evil dictator of all humanity. By original design of the clever, mighty 1945 World War II American winner. Just such a terrible 2024 war. American 2,000-pound bomb extermination of approaching 100,000 Palestinians, 90% non-combatants, is refused. Security Council ceasefire rulings, 14 yeses to guess who's no. Of 45 million war slaughtered over 80 years since even greater World War II carnage, a giant fraction died after usually the two monsters fueling close to twice as many wars as the world's 193 other nations combined. Plus another 3 invaders and weapons merchants. Yes, those exact 5 wars to doomsday conspirators originally assassinating our United Nations, vetoed a myriad of peace, army, and forced ceasefire relief missions. Always the same goddamn wars they were weaponizing or directly fighting for profit, power, and hate. Quite a number of UN peacekeeping missions have saved probably millions of lives, but only when the 5 monsters behind most of the slaughter checked their total power needs and weapons company receipts and decided to give the 190 weakling wimps 1 or 2 breaks. Okay, what's the 2024 picture? Israel has murdered, including horrible health facilities caused, close to 100,000 Palestinians in barely over a year. Every killing just as directly caused by the American supplier of many, many thousands of 500 to 2,000 pound bombs. Concurrently, the nation, understandably, permanently infuriated by the Hamas butchery of 1,200 cross-border Jewish innocents into their own revenge war, now works 365 days a year to siege-starve 2.3 million civilians. Utterly guilty of having desperate leaders hiding in tunnels, scared to surrender. A dozen American Security Council vetoes and thousands more bombs in Israel's warehouses and on the way all say, exactly like the majority of Israel's leaders, "You 2.3 million Gaza scum, die right there, or later out in the Sinai Desert, where you all will be driven." Saudi Arabia has for many years ravaged Yemen with American bombs, killing 375,000. Syria's Assad and Russia's Putin stay busy blowing the 600,000th Syrian civilian to bits, all wrongly accused of being armed rebels. Sudan's horrific civil war that has in a short year made 11 million homeless and killed 60,000 is just as quickly starving a shocking percentage of those destitute millions wandering past global warming's permanently drought-withered farms. UN Sudan peacekeeping force proposals are not, for once, sabotaged by any of the Foul Five, but scant available UN troops are refused by both government and rebels, way too happy and empowered by war and associated starvation genocide. Dozens of UN projects are initiated for Sudan's rescue, but everyone ends fast when 100,000 machine guns tell them to get out today. In this speech, I'll have plenty more to say about what a real United Nations, true Security Council, without single-nation veto power, but with world crisis-sufficient peacekeeper military force and food, water, and medicine relief stocks equal to world hotspot need, would be able to do. Deliver a peace and love army big enough to say, "Here we come with help for all. We got the numbers to lower your guns in peace. You killers might as well let us organize your peace talks, relief aid, and coalition government, because the only bleeding and dying left around here would be you dumbasses losing shootouts with us."